I looked out at the faces of our friends and family, all smiling, all expecting something. A heartfelt tribute to 10 years of marriage. A celebration. My wife, Vanessa, was beaming from her seat beside my parents, a vision in the emerald green dress I'd bought her for this very occasion. Her smile, though, the one I'd known for half my life, felt like a perfectly crafted illusion. It didn't quite reach her eyes. Not anymore. My own smile felt painted on, a grotesque mask hiding the turmoil churning inside me. My fingers, slick with a nervous sweat, trembled as I reached into my suit jacket pocket. The metal was cool against my skin. "Before I continue this toast," I began, my voice raspy, not quite my own, "I believe this belongs to someone here tonight." I pulled out the man's ring, holding it up for everyone to see. A heavy, dead silence descended upon the room, punctuated only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. Vanessa's smile faltered, then dissolved completely, her face paling to a ghostly white. The day had started with such forced normalcy, such a determined effort to pretend everything was perfect. I'd woken early, the house already buzzing with a low hum of activity. Caterers were due any minute, florists too. 10 years, a decade. It felt like a lifetime and no time at all. Vanessa was a whirlwind of motion, directing, organizing, a tightly coiled spring of nervous energy. I watched her from the doorway of our bedroom. This woman I'd loved, this woman I thought I knew. "David, are you going to get dressed or just stand there admiring the chaos?" she'd called out, her voice a little too bright, a little too brittle. "Just admiring the ringmaster," I'd replied, trying for levity I didn't feel. I'd laid out my best suit. The charcoal gray one she always said made me look distinguished. As I slipped on the jacket, my fingers brushed against something hard in the inner pocket. Frowning, I pulled it out. A man's ring, not mine. My wedding band was firmly on my left hand, a simple gold band, a symbol of vows I'd taken seriously. This was different, heavier, more ornate. Platinum, with a small, almost invisible pattern etched into the band. I turned it over in my palm, a cold dread seeping into my bones. Inside, an inscription. "Forever yours, A." A. The initial hit me like a physical blow. My mind raced. Vanessa had borrowed this very jacket last week. She'd said she needed something smart for a work dinner, that her own blazer was at the dry cleaners. "Just a quick meeting with some new colleagues," she'd said, breezy and casual. Too casual, in retrospect. The pieces began to fall into place, jagged and painful. The ring wasn't for a colleague, it was for a lover. My first instinct was to confront her, to throw the ring in her face and demand an explanation. But as I stood there, the evidence heavy in my hand, a strange calm settled over me. The caterers were arriving, their vans pulling into the driveway. Vanessa was laughing with one of them in the hallway, her voice echoing with a forced cheerfulness that now sounded like a cruel mockery. I slipped the ring back into my pocket. Not now. Not yet. This charade, this perfectly curated illusion of a happy marriage, deserved a more public dismantling. The hollowness that had been growing between us for months, maybe years, suddenly had a name, a face, an initial. A. I thought back to how it all began, to the bright-eyed university students we'd been. We met in a crowded lecture hall, a stupid argument over a shared textbook sparking something unexpected. Vanessa, with her fiery opinions and quick wit, had challenged and intrigued me. We were inseparable after that. A whirlwind romance, fueled by cheap wine, late-night talks, and the intoxicating belief that we had found our other half. I remembered the taste of freedom as we backpacked through Europe after graduation, sleeping on uncomfortable trains, eating street food, and feeling like the world was ours for the taking. Every memory was tinged with her laughter, her hand in mine. Our wedding day, a sun-drenched afternoon in her parents' garden, felt like a dream. She'd looked ethereal in her simple white dress, her eyes shining with a love that I'd believed was as boundless as mine. Buying our first home, this very house, painting the walls together, dreaming of a future filled with children and laughter. These were the memories I clung to, the foundation upon which I'd built my life. But over the last 2 years, cracks had started to appear in that foundation. Subtle at first. Vanessa began working late more often, her excuses plausible, but increasingly frequent. "Big project," she'd say, or "deadline looming." She became emotionally distant, retreating into herself. The easy intimacy we'd shared, the casual touches, the shared jokes, all slowly eroded. I'd told myself it was just a phase, that all marriages went through ups and downs. I focused on my work as a financial advisor, burying myself in spreadsheets and client meetings, a convenient way to avoid the growing chasm between us. Denial is a powerful opiate. I'd convinced myself we were fine, that this was just the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. But the ring in my pocket, cold and hard, was a brutal awakening. The phase wasn't ending. It was escalating. And I had been a fool. The ring wasn't the first clue, just the most undeniable. Looking back, the signs had been there for months. Little red flags I'd dismissed, explained away, or simply refused to see. Vanessa's new work friend Alex, for instance. His name had started cropping up in her conversations about 6 months ago. Alex says the funniest things. Alex and I are working on this new campaign. Alex thinks we should try that new Italian place. Always Alex. I'd pictured him as some harmless older colleague, maybe a bit of a mentor figure. I hadn't imagined this. Then there were the text messages. She'd become fiercely protective of her phone, angling it away from me when she typed, her brow furrowed in concentration. Mysterious texts would arrive late at night, and she'd snatch her phone up, a flush creeping up her neck. "Just work," she'd mutter, but her eyes would be shifty, avoiding mine. Weekend work conferences became a regular occurrence. She'd pack a small suitcase, kiss me goodbye with a peck on the cheek that felt more dutiful than affectionate, and return on Sunday evening looking strangely refreshed, almost glowing. Not tired and stressed as one might expect after 2 days of intense meetings. And the scent. A faint, unfamiliar cologne clinging to her clothes, a scent that wasn't mine, a scent that spoke of clandestine meetings and shared secrets. I'd noticed it, even commented on it once. "Oh, probably just from someone at the office," she'd said, a little too quickly. I'd let it go. It was easier than confronting the alternative. I realize now, with a sickening lurch in my stomach, that I'd been willfully blind, choosing ignorance over the painful truth. The ring just made it impossible to ignore any longer. As I moved through the house, mechanically helping with the last-minute party preparations, every observation felt magnified, filtered through the lens of my newfound suspicion. Vanessa was checking her phone constantly, her thumb flying across the screen, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips. I noticed a new necklace around her neck, a delicate silver chain with a small, abstract pendant. I hadn't bought it for her. "That's beautiful," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Where did you get it?" She fumbled with the clasp, her cheeks coloring slightly. "Oh, this? Just a little something I picked up for myself. You know, for the anniversary." Her explanation was flimsy, unconvincing. A little later, I saw her slip out into the garden, her phone pressed to her ear. Curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need for confirmation, got the better of me. I followed, keeping to the shadows of the house. Her back was to me, her voice low and urgent. "No, you can't come tonight," she was saying. "He doesn't suspect anything." I know, I miss you too." The words hung in the air, each one a tiny shard of ice piercing my heart. She ended the call abruptly as I stepped out of the shadows, a startled gasp escaping her lips. "David, you scared me." "Who was that?" I asked, my voice flat. "Just work," she said, stuffing her phone into her pocket, "confirming some last-minute details for that project." The lie was so blatant, so transparent, it was almost insulting. The first guests started to arrive, a flurry of hugs, kisses, and well wishes. Friends we'd known for years, family who had watched us grow from awkward teenagers into what they believed was a happy, settled couple. I watched Vanessa transform into the perfect hostess, her earlier agitation replaced by a dazzling smile and an effortless charm. She laughed, she mingled, she touched people's arms as she spoke, her animation almost manic. Was she always this performative, or was I just seeing it now for the first time? Her sister, Emma, gave me a long, searching look, her eyes filled with a sympathy that made me wonder if she knew something. Had she seen the cracks, too? My best friend Mark clapped me on the shoulder, a broad grin on his face. "Happy anniversary, mate. 10 years, can you believe it?" Then, his expression shifted, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Hey, I've been trying to call you all week. Everything okay?" I'd been so wrapped up in my own denial, my own misery, I hadn't even checked my messages properly. Had Mark been trying to warn me? Was I the last to know? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I mumbled something about being busy with party prep and forced another smile. The ring in my pocket felt like a lead weight, dragging me down into an ocean of deceit. I moved through the party in a daze, a ghost at my own celebration. Small talk felt like navigating a minefield. 10 wonderful years, someone chirped, raising their glass. I nodded, the smile on my face feeling like it might crack and fall off. Each congratulatory pat on the back, each well-meaning compliment about our perfect marriage, felt like a tiny, sharp stab. The whiskey I was drinking wasn't helping. Or maybe it was. It dulled the edges of the raw, gaping wound in my chest. But it also fueled a reckless anger that simmered just beneath the surface. My thoughts kept returning to the ring, burning a hole in my pocket, a tangible symbol of Vanessa's betrayal. I found myself watching her, trying to see her as a stranger would. Her animated gestures, as she recounted an amusing anecdote to a group of friends, the way she tilted her head and laughed, a musical sound that now seemed jarringly false. How she touched people's arms when she laughed, a habit I used to find endearing, now seemed like a calculated gesture, part of a well-rehearsed performance. Had our entire life together been a performance? Was I the only one who hadn't been reading the script? The thought was terrifying. I saw her glance at her phone again, a quick, furtive movement. Who was she expecting a message from? No doubt. The party was in full swing, music playing, laughter echoing through the house and garden, when an unexpected guest arrived. I saw Vanessa's face first. Her animated expression froze, the color draining from her cheeks, leaving her looking suddenly pale and fragile. I followed her gaze to the doorway. Alicia, one of Vanessa's co-workers, stood there looking flustered and uncomfortable. I knew Alicia not well, but we'd met a few times at Vanessa's office parties. She was usually bubbly and outgoing. Tonight she looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Alicia moved towards Vanessa, her steps hesitant. She gave Vanessa a quick, awkward hug, then leaned in to whisper something in her ear. I was too far away to hear the words, but I saw Vanessa's eyes widen, then dart frantically around the room, a trapped animal looking for an escape. What had Alicia said? I edged closer, pretending to refresh my drink, trying to catch snippets of their hushed, urgent conversation. He insisted, Alicia was saying, her voice barely audible above the din of the party. Oh, couldn't stop him. He's on his way. On his way? Who was on his way? Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth, a gesture of pure panic. She mumbled something to Alicia, then turned and practically fled towards the bathroom, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. A cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. This was it. The moment the carefully constructed facade was about to shatter. I followed her, catching up to her in the hallway just outside the bathroom. "Vanessa, what's going on?" I asked, my voice low and firm. "Who's on his way?" She avoided my gaze, her hand still pressed to her mouth. "Nothing, David. I don't feel well. Too much champagne, I think." Her voice was shaky, unconvincing. "Don't lie to me, Vanessa," I said. The anger I'd been suppressing finally starting to break through. Alicia looked terrified. "What did she tell you?" "It's nothing, really," she insisted, trying to push past me. "Just some work drama, you know how it is." "No, I don't know how it is," I said, blocking her path. "But I'm about to find out, aren't I?" This was the first real moment of direct tension between us all day. The first crack in the carefully maintained peace. Her eyes, usually so full of life, were wide with a fear I'd never seen before. Just then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. A loud, insistent chime that cut through the music and chatter, silencing the room. Vanessa flinched as if she'd been struck. All eyes turned towards the front door. I looked at Vanessa, her face a mask of pure terror, then back at the door. With a sense of grim inevitability, I walked towards it. My hand was steady as I reached for the doorknob. I opened the door to find a man I'd never met before. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a stylish dark suit, his hair perfectly coiffed. He looked to be around our age, perhaps a little younger, with a confident, almost arrogant air about him. He smiled, a smooth, practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Funny how I was noticing that a lot lately. "You must be David," the man said, his voice carrying a strange, unsettling familiarity. He extended a hand. "I'm Alex." Alex. A. The ring in my pocket suddenly felt scorching hot against my leg. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening thud. This was him, the man whose ring I carried, the man who was forever yours. I looked at his left hand, a pale band of skin where a ring should have been. Numbly, I shook his offered hand. His grip was firm, confident, too confident. I invited him in, my voice sounding distant and hollow even to my own ears. Alex stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room, searching. And then he saw her. Vanessa was standing frozen near the drinks table, her face ashen. Their eyes met across the crowded space, a fleeting glance, but it was enough. The look they exchanged, a potent cocktail of panic, longing, and shared guilt, told me everything I needed to know. My marriage, my life, the future I had envisioned, it all lay shattered at my feet. My legs felt like lead, but somehow I managed to mumble an excuse about needing the restroom. I walked, or rather stumbled, towards the downstairs bathroom, the one near the kitchen, away from the main throng of the party. I locked the door behind me, the click of the latch echoing loudly in the sudden silence. The face that stared back at me from the mirror was a stranger's, pale, gaunt, with eyes that burned with a mixture of fury and unshed tears. This wasn't David Miller, the successful financial advisor, the devoted husband. This was a man on the verge of breaking. I leaned heavily against the sink, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I pulled the ring from my pocket, its metallic coolness a stark contrast to my clammy palm. "Forever yours, A." The inscription seemed to mock me, a cruel testament to Vanessa's betrayal. Memories flooded my mind, a torrent of images and emotions, Vanessa's increasing distraction, the endless late nights at the office, the gradual withdrawal of her affection, the way she'd flinch almost imperceptibly when I tried to touch her. My own complacency, my willful blindness, my stupid, stubborn refusal to see what was happening right in front of me. How had I let it get to this point? How had I been so oblivious? A bitter, humorless laugh escaped my lips. I was a fool, a cuckold, the star of my own tragicomedy. My first instinct was to storm back out there, to confront them both, to unleash the torrent of rage and pain that was threatening to consume me. I imagined the scene, the shouting, the accusations, the horrified faces of our guests, the sheer, unadulterated drama of it all. It would be a spectacle, a public humiliation for Vanessa and her lover, and for me. But something held me back, some small, rational part of my brain, fighting through the fog of emotion, urged caution. A messy public meltdown wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't undo the betrayal. It wouldn't heal the wound. It would just be ugly. I splashed cold water on my face, the shock of it momentarily clearing my head. I took a deep breath, then another. I needed to think. I needed a plan. This wasn't just about my pain, my anger. This was about control. I had been a passive observer in the slow disintegration of my marriage for too long. Now, it was time to take back the narrative. I looked at the ring in my hand, then back at my reflection. A flicker of determination sparked in my eyes. I wouldn't let them break me. I wouldn't let them reduce me to a screaming, pathetic wreck. I would handle this my way, on my terms. A chilling sense of calm settled over me. I slipped the ring back into my pocket. The decision was made. Returning to the party felt like stepping onto a stage, but this time I wasn't an unwitting actor in someone else's play. I was the director. I moved through the crowd with a newfound purpose, my senses heightened, my gaze sharp. I watched Alex and Vanessa, my observation now strategic, clinical. They were clearly trying to avoid direct interaction, their attempts at nonchalance almost comical in their transparency. But I caught their furtive glances, the way they subtly positioned themselves to keep each other in sight across the crowded room. It was a silent, desperate dance of deception. I maneuvered myself closer to the drinks table, pretending to refill my glass, positioning myself just within earshot of a brief, whispered exchange between them. Their words were coded, fragmented, but the meaning was clear. "The situation," Vanessa hissed, her eyes darting nervously towards me. "What to do now?" Alex muttered, his confident facade showing signs of strain. He touched the empty spot on his ring finger, a worried frown creasing his forehead. Vanessa gave a subtle shake of her head, a silent warning to keep his distance, to say nothing. They were trapped, and they knew it. And for the first time all night, a grim satisfaction settled within me. The party wore on, a surreal parody of celebration. Then Mark, my best friend, ever the loyal best man, took center stage. He tapped a spoon against his glass, calling for attention. "All right, everyone, settle down, he boomed, his voice jovial. As David's best man, and someone who's known these two since their awkward university days, I feel it's my duty to say a few words." A wave of affectionate laughter rippled through the room. Mark launched into a nostalgic speech, full of embarrassing anecdotes from our early dating days. The disastrous first meal I'd tried to cook for Vanessa, the time we got lost on a camping trip and had to be rescued by a sheep farmer. The crowd roared with laughter. Vanessa managed a weak smile, but her eyes were fixed on me, a desperate, pleading look in them. Each of Mark's well-intentioned stories felt like another twist of the knife in my gut. And now, Mark concluded, his voice thick with emotion, I'd like to ask the man of the hour, my best friend David, to say a few words about his beautiful wife and their 10 wonderful years together. All eyes turned to me. Vanessa looked like she was about to faint. The ring in my pocket felt heavy, a loaded weapon. Slowly, deliberately, I rose to my feet, my whiskey glass in hand. The moment had arrived. I raised my glass, the amber liquid catching the light. The room was quiet, expectant. "Thank you, Mark," I began, my voice sounding strangely calm, almost detached to my own ears. "And thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with us. 10 years, it's quite a milestone." I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room, lingering for a moment on Vanessa, then on Alex, who was trying to look inconspicuous near the back. "I remember when I first met Vanessa," I continued, my voice taking on a reminiscent tone. "She was fiery, opinionated, and utterly captivating. We argued about everything, and I loved every second of it." A few soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. Vanessa, however, was not chuckling. Her smile was strained, her eyes wide with a growing unease. She knew me too well. She knew this calm was deceptive. "We built a life together, a home. We shared dreams." My words were conventional enough, the standard anniversary fare, but beneath the surface, a darker current was beginning to flow. I could see Vanessa trying to signal me with her eyes, a subtle flick towards her watch, a slight shake of her head. "Keep it short, keep it conventional, don't do this." But it was too late. I was already off script. My tone shifted, the warmth draining from my voice, replaced by an icy precision. "But marriage isn't just about the good times, is it?" I said, my gaze locking with Vanessa's. The air in the room grew heavy, the earlier conviviality evaporating like mist. "It's about honesty, commitment, fidelity." I let the words hang there for a moment, each one a carefully aimed dart. I saw Alex shift uncomfortably, his eyes darting towards the exit. "It's about the promises we make to each other," I pressed on, my voice hardening. "The sacred vows, the symbols of those promises." My hand moved slowly, deliberately, towards my jacket pocket. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Vanessa's face was a mask of dawning horror. "Before I continue this toast," I announced, my voice ringing out with newfound clarity and strength, "I believe this belongs to someone here tonight." I pulled out the ring, holding it aloft. The platinum band gleamed under the party lights, a stark, incriminating piece of evidence. A collective gasp swept through the room, followed by an unnerving, absolute silence. Vanessa's face, already pale, drained of all remaining color. She looked like she might collapse. Across the room, I saw Alex involuntarily touch his empty ring finger, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "I found this in my jacket pocket earlier today," I continued, my voice calm, almost conversational, in stark contrast to the turmoil I knew I was unleashing. The jacket, incidentally, that my wife borrowed last week for a work dinner. The implication hung heavy in the air. I turned the ring over in my fingers, then read the inscription aloud, my voice clear and steady. "Forever yours, A." I paused, letting the words sink in, then lifted my gaze to lock directly onto Alex's. "Would you like to claim your property, Mr. A?" I asked, a chilling politeness lacing my tone. "Or should I continue guessing what else my wife has been borrowing?" Gasps and horrified murmurs erupted throughout the crowd. Faces turned from me to Vanessa, then to the trapped, ashen-faced Alex. Vanessa stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and shame. Alex looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. The carefully constructed facade of our perfect life, our perfect marriage, had been utterly and irrevocably shattered. I looked at the stunned faces around me, the whispers growing louder. I placed the ring, Alex's ring, on the small table beside me, next to a half-eaten plate of canapes. Then I set down my whiskey glass with a decisive click. Without another word, without a backward glance, I turned and walked calmly towards the front door. Behind me, chaos erupted. I could hear Vanessa calling my name, her voice shrill with panic. I could hear the shocked exclamations of our guests, the frantic whispers, the dawning realization of the drama that had just unfolded. Alex, I imagined, was probably trying to become invisible, but I didn't turn back. I didn't hesitate. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, the sounds of the party, the music, the laughter, now replaced by a cacophony of confusion and dismay. Fading behind me, a strange and unexpected sensation washed over me. It wasn't anger or sadness or even triumph, it was relief, a profound, liberating relief. The charade was over. I'd just reached my car, parked down the street to leave space for guests, when I heard her. "David, wait, please!" Vanessa. Her voice was choked with sobs, her footsteps pounding on the pavement behind me. I stopped, my hand on the car door, but I didn't turn around. Not yet. I needed a moment to brace myself. She caught up to me, breathless, mascara streaking her tear-stained face, her emerald green dress, once so elegant, now looking rumpled and out of place in the harsh glare of the streetlight. "David, let me explain," she pleaded, her hand reaching for my arm. I flinched away from her touch as if burned. This was it. The confrontation I'd both dreaded and craved, the one where the carefully constructed lies would finally crumble, where the truth, however ugly, would be laid bare. "Explain what, Vanessa?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "Explain the ring? Explain Alex? Explain how you've made a mockery of our marriage, of me, in front of everyone we know?" "It didn't mean anything," she cried, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "It was a mistake. I was confused. I was lonely." Lonely? I finally turned to face her, my own anger, cold and sharp, cutting through the numbness. "You were lonely? Or were you just bored, Vanessa? Looking for a thrill?" She flinched at the harshness in my tone. "No, it wasn't like that. It just happened." "Things don't just happen, Vanessa," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Choices are made. How long has it been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. "It doesn't matter." "How long?" I pressed, my voice rising. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Almost a year," she whispered, the admission hanging heavy in the night air. A year? Not a fleeting mistake, not a moment of confusion. A year of calculated deception, of whispered phone calls and secret meetings. A year of lies. The confirmation, though I'd suspected as much, still felt like a punch to the gut. My worst fears, now undeniably real. She broke down then, the sobs racking her body. Through her tears, the full extent of the affair emerged, a sordid, painful narrative. She'd met Alex at a work conference in another city. It had started, she claimed, as just friendship. Someone to talk to, someone who understood the pressures of her job. Innocent lunches, after-work drinks. Then, it had crossed a line. One drunken night, a shared hotel room. And it had continued, escalating from furtive encounters to a full-blown affair. "I still love you, David," she insisted, her voice thick with tears. "I was going to end it with Alex, I swear. That's why I took the ring. He left it at the apartment he keeps. I took it because I was going to give it back to him, to tell him it was over." Her words, meant to offer some kind of solace, some justification, only twisted the knife further. She'd been in his apartment. He had an apartment. This wasn't just some casual fling. This was a parallel life she'd been living. I listened calmly, a strange detachment settling over me. The anger was still there, a burning ember in my chest, but it was overlaid with a weary resignation. The fight had gone out of me. "Were you ever going to tell me, Vanessa?" I asked, my voice flat. "If I hadn't found the ring, would you have ever told me the truth?" Her hesitation, the flicker of guilt in her eyes before she could school her features, was answer enough. No, she wouldn't have. She would have continued the charade, living her double life, while I remained the oblivious, trusting husband. The thought was more painful than the affair itself. Then, something unexpected happened. The words started to pour out of me, years of unspoken unhappiness, of quiet frustrations, of a slowly dying love. "You know, Vanessa," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, "I haven't been happy either. Not for a long time." She looked up, shocked, her tears momentarily forgotten. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've been lonely too," I admitted, the confession tasting bitter on my tongue. But instead of seeking comfort in someone else's arms, I poured myself into work. I built walls around myself. I convinced myself that if I just ignored the problems, they would magically disappear. I let out a humorless laugh. Turns out that's not how it works. I told her about the nights I'd lain awake beside her, feeling like there was an ocean between us. About the times I'd tried to reach out, only to be met with cool indifference or a distracted smile. About the slow, agonizing realization that the woman I'd married was slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to stop it. "There's blame on both sides, Vanessa," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "Our marriage didn't fail just because of your affair. It was failing long before Alex came into the picture. But the betrayal, that's something I can't forgive. You didn't just break our vows, Vanessa. You shattered my trust. And I don't know if that's something that can ever be repaired." For the first time, I was expressing my emotions, my pain, my disappointment, with a raw, unfiltered honesty. No more suppressing, no more keeping the peace. Vanessa stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. It was as if she was seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time in years. And perhaps I was seeing myself more clearly too. The perfect husband, the stoic provider, was a role I had played for too long. The man standing before her now was broken, yes, but also strangely liberated. The walk back to the house felt like miles, each step heavy with unspoken words and shattered illusions. The party, predictably, had imploded. Most of the guests had made awkward, hasty departures, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and pity. Only a handful of close family and friends remained, huddled in small, hushed groups, the remnants of a celebration turned wake. Alex was there, looking pale and shell-shocked, cornered by Vanessa's brother Michael, whose expression was thunderous. Emma, Vanessa's sister, was by Vanessa's side in an instant, gathering her purse and shawl, her arm protectively around Vanessa's shoulders. The lines were already being drawn, loyalties declared. Mark, bless him, was waiting for me by the door, his hand landing on my shoulder in a gesture of silent, unwavering support. He didn't say anything, but his presence spoke volumes. The three-way confrontation was unavoidable, a car crash in slow motion. Alex, to his credit, or perhaps out of sheer desperation, attempted an apology. "David, I am so sorry," he stammered, his earlier confidence completely gone. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Vanessa, emboldened by her sister's presence, chimed in. "He's right, David. It was a mistake. I was going to end it. We were going to end it." Their identical excuses, the pathetic party line they'd clearly concocted, were almost laughable. I let out a short, incredulous laugh. You were going to end it, really? When? After another year? Another secret trip? When exactly was this grand revelation supposed to occur? I turned to Alex, my voice dripping with sarcasm. And you, Alex, did you know she was going to end it? Or were you under a different impression? The question seemed to throw them both. Their eyes met, a flicker of panic and confusion passing between them. Alex looked at Vanessa, then back at me, his face a mask of bewildered guilt. Vanessa said. She said she was unhappy. She said she was going to leave you. Vanessa's head snapped towards him. Alex! I never said that. Yes, you did, he insisted, his voice rising in desperation. You said he didn't understand you, that you were growing apart. You said you were looking for a way out. Their conflicting answers, their frantic attempts to rewrite their shared history, revealed even more layers of deception. It was a tangled web of lies, and they were both caught in it. Alex clearly thought Vanessa was planning a future with him. Vanessa, it seemed, had been playing them both, keeping her options open, enjoying the thrill of a double life with no real intention of upsetting her comfortable existence. The revelations didn't stop there. As the argument escalated, other secrets began to spill out, like poison from a festering wound. Alex, it turned out, wasn't divorced, as he had apparently told Vanessa. He was merely separated, his own marital situation far from resolved. You told me your divorce was finalized, Vanessa shrieked at him, her face contorted with fury. You said she was the one who had the affair. Then Michael, Vanessa's brother, who had been listening with a stony expression, dropped another bombshell. And what about the money, Vanessa? He interjected, his voice cold and hard. The money you've been moving into a separate account for the past 6 months. Was that part of ending it too? Vanessa stared at him, speechless, her face paling even further. I felt a fresh wave of nausea. A separate bank account. She had been planning something. Maybe not leaving me for Alex, but certainly feathering her own nest, preparing for... what? An escape? A new life? The betrayal just kept deepening, the cuts becoming more numerous, more painful. Our remaining friends and family reacted with varying degrees of shock and disbelief. Some looked horrified, others sympathetic. Sides were clearly being taken. My parents, who had been sitting in stunned silence, looked utterly heartbroken. Vanessa's mother was in tears, being comforted by Emma. The perfect facade of our happy social circle, the carefully curated image of two families united by a loving marriage, had cracked wide open, revealing the old tensions, the hidden resentments, the shifting loyalties that lay beneath. Amidst the chaos, the shouting, the tears, I felt a strange sense of detachment. It was as if I was watching a particularly dramatic soap opera, only I was one of the lead characters. I had said my piece, unleashed my truth. There was nothing more for me to do here. Quietly, without any dramatic declarations or threats, I turned to Mark. Can I stay at your place tonight? He nodded, his expression grim but supportive. Of course, mate, for as long as you need. I looked at Vanessa, her face a tear-streaked mess, her eyes pleading with me, but there was nothing left to say. No accusations, no recriminations. Just a vast, empty space where our love used to be. I'll be staying at Mark's, I stated, my voice surprisingly calm. I'll contact a lawyer in the morning. The contrast between the explosive revelations and my quiet departure was, I hoped, striking. I didn't want to be part of their drama anymore. I wanted out. As I walked towards the door, I paused at the small table where I had placed Alex's ring. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my own wedding band, the simple gold band I had worn for 10 years, and placed it on the table beside the other. 2 rings, symbols of 2 broken promises, lying side by side. Then I walked out, leaving the wreckage of my marriage behind me. I woke up the next morning on Mark's sofa, a dull ache behind my eyes and a heavier ache in my chest. For a few disorienting moments, I didn't know where I was. Then, the events of the previous night came crashing back, a tidal wave of shame, anger, and a bewildering sense of, what? Not quite relief, not yet. Just a vast, echoing emptiness. It was done. My marriage, the life I had known for a decade, was over. I fumbled for my phone on the coffee table. Dozens of missed calls and messages. Vanessa, of course, her name flashing repeatedly on the screen. My parents, her parents, various friends, some offering condolences, others undoubtedly fishing for gossip. Everyone with questions, opinions, taking sides. I couldn't face it. Not yet. I turned the phone off, the silence a small, temporary reprieve. Mark appeared in the doorway, a mug of coffee in his hand. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice gentle. I just nodded, unable to find the words. He sat down in the armchair opposite me, handing me the coffee. "I kind of suspected, you know," he said quietly, after a few moments of comfortable silence. I looked up, surprised. "You did? Why didn't you say anything?" He shrugged, a look of discomfort on his face. "It wasn't my place, mate, and honestly, I wasn't sure. Just little things, the way she looked at her phone sometimes, the way you two seemed distant. I hoped I was wrong." He paused. "I'm so sorry, David." His support, his quiet understanding without judgment, meant more than he could know. We sat in silence for a while, sipping our coffee, the unspoken horrors of the previous night hanging heavy in the air. The first week apart was a blur. I took a leave of absence from work, unable to face the sympathetic stares or the inevitable questions. I went through the motions of separating my life from Vanessa's. A series of painful, bureaucratic tasks. Opening a new bank account. Changing my mailing address. I went back to the house once, when I knew she wouldn't be there, to collect some essential belongings. Walking through those rooms, once so familiar, now felt like trespassing in a stranger's life. Every object, every photograph, was a painful reminder of what I had lost, of what had been a lie. The emotions came in waves, unpredictable and overwhelming. Sometimes it was a searing rage, a desire to smash things, to scream until my lungs burned. Other times, it was a profound, debilitating grief worry, a sorrow so deep it felt like I was drowning. There was embarrassment, too, the humiliation of being the deceived husband, the last one to know. And then, surprisingly, moments of unexpected relief, a sense of lightness, of freedom from the suffocating pretense of our dying marriage. Vanessa's messages, when I finally brought myself to turn my phone back on, oscillated wildly between desperate pleas for forgiveness and bitter accusations. One minute she was begging me to come home, swearing she'd do anything to fix things. The next, she was accusing me of humiliating her publicly, of deliberately trying to destroy her life. Her words were a chaotic jumble of guilt, anger, and self-pity. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The social fallout was swift and brutal. Our carefully curated circle of friends fractured, taking sides with a vehemence that surprised me. Some mutual friends, caught in the crossfire, avoided both of us, their discomfort palpable. Vanessa's family predictably closed ranks around her. I heard through the grapevine that they were painting me as the villain, the cold, unforgiving husband who had overreacted to one little mistake. My own parents, thankfully, offered quiet, unwavering support, respecting my decision without judgment. Their quiet strength was a lifeline in those first turbulent weeks. I began to see who my real friends were, and they weren't always the people I would have expected. Some, whom I'd considered close, disappeared. Others, more casual acquaintances, stepped up with unexpected kindness and support. It was a harsh but necessary lesson in human nature. About a month after the party, I had an unexpected encounter. I was sitting in a small, independent coffee shop, trying to lose myself in a book, when the door opened and Alex walked in. My heart lurched. My first instinct was a primal urge to hit him, to unleash some of the pent-up rage that still simmered beneath the surface. He saw me at the same moment, his eyes widening in surprise, then apprehension. He hesitated, clearly unsure whether to approach or retreat. To my own surprise, instead of lunging across the table, I just stared at him. He looked diminished. Smaller, somehow, than the confident, arrogant man who had walked into my anniversary party. The fight seemed to have gone out of him, too. He took a tentative step towards my table. "David," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. Can I join you for a minute?" I should have said no. I should have told him to get lost, but something, a morbid curiosity perhaps, made me nod. He sat down, looking uncomfortable and out of place. We sat in silence for a few awkward moments, the air thick with unspoken accusations and shared history. Then, he started to talk. And to my surprise, I listened. He didn't make excuses, not really. He didn't try to justify his actions. Instead, he talked about Vanessa, about their relationship. He painted a picture of a woman who was deeply unhappy, yes, but also manipulative and deceptive. He revealed details, small, seemingly insignificant things that contradicted Vanessa's version of events. He told me about her constant complaints about me, her subtle, and not so subtle, hints that our marriage was over, that she was looking for a way out. He admitted he'd been a fool to believe her, to get drawn into her drama. He too had been a pawn in her game. It was a strange, surreal conversation. Here I was, sitting opposite my wife's lover, the man who had helped destroy my marriage. And instead of wanting to kill him, I found myself feeling a grudging, almost imperceptible flicker of, not sympathy, exactly, but a kind of shared understanding. We were two sides of the same coin, both victims, in different ways, of Vanessa's deceptions. As I listened to him, a new, disturbing thought began to take root. Vanessa hadn't just lied to me. She had lied to him too. She had manipulated us both, playing us against each other, weaving a complex web of deceit to serve her own selfish needs. The realization was both sickening and, in a strange way, liberating. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it shifted the narrative. This wasn't just about a simple affair. This was about a far more profound and calculated betrayal. 6 months. Half a year since my world had imploded. I was sitting in my new apartment, a small, sparsely furnished place on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The divorce had been finalized a few weeks ago, a surprisingly anticlimactic end to a decade of shared life. No drama, no last-minute hysterics. Just lawyers, paperwork, and a quiet, sad finality. I'd started therapy, something I never would have considered before. Talking to a stranger about my deepest fears and insecurities was surprisingly helpful. It forced me to confront the uncomfortable truths about myself, about my marriage, about the role I had played in its demise. I'd reconnected with old friends, people I'd neglected during the years I'd been so wrapped up in my perfect marriage. I was building new routines, rediscovering old hobbies, slowly, tentatively, piecing together a new life from the wreckage of the old one. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Vanessa and Alex's relationship, predictably, had imploded within weeks of the anniversary party. The public humiliation, the exposure of their lies, had been too much for their fragile connection to withstand. Last I heard, Alex was trying to reconcile with his estranged wife, and Vanessa was... Well, I wasn't sure what Vanessa was doing. Neither of them had contacted me directly in months, and for that, I was grateful. I needed the space, the distance, to heal. Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was Vanessa. My first instinct was to ignore it, to delete the message without reading it. But curiosity, or perhaps a need for closure, got the better of me. She wanted to meet, for coffee, just to talk. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. We met at a neutral coffee shop, halfway between my new apartment and her old life, our old life. She looked different, thinner, perhaps. The usual carefully applied makeup was more subdued. There was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, but also a new, unfamiliar quietness. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to justify her actions. Instead, she offered a genuine, heartfelt apology. She took full responsibility for the affair, for the lies, for the pain she had caused. She talked about the therapy she'd also started, about the uncomfortable truths she was learning about herself. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I was talking to the Vanessa I had once known, the woman I had fallen in love with before the bitterness and deceit had taken root. We talked for over an hour, an honest, painful, and ultimately cathartic conversation. We talked about where our marriage had gone wrong, the mistakes we had both made, the slow, imperceptible drift that had pulled us apart long before Alex entered the picture. There was no talk of reconciliation, no suggestion that we could ever go back to what we had been. That ship had sailed, sunk, and been salvaged for parts. But as I walked away from the coffee shop that afternoon, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a very long time. It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely, but it was something close. It was closure. A few weeks later, I found myself at another social gathering, Mark's 30th birthday party. It was a loud, boisterous affair, filled with laughter and music and friends. A year ago, I would have been there with Vanessa, playing the role of the happy, devoted husband. Tonight, I was just David. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, that was enough. Someone I didn't know well, a friend of Mark's wife, asked me about my marriage. In the past, I would have deflected the question, offered a polite, non-committal answer. Tonight, I found myself answering honestly, without bitterness, without shame. I was married for 10 years, I said. It didn't work out, but I learned a lot. As I spoke, my gaze drifted across the crowded room. I saw a woman laughing, a genuine, unforced laugh that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just herself. Our eyes met, just for a fleeting moment, a brief, unexpected connection. She smiled, a small, shy smile, then turned back to her friends. The future remained unwritten, a blank page waiting to be filled. There were no guarantees, no easy answers. But as I stood there, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and the possibility of new beginnings, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. For the first time, I felt ready to turn the page.